Yeah! Coming to you live from WRUE in Tennessee, it's the Scribbling Woman.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rue. I am the Scribbling Woman, and so are you. And that's why we're having this conversation. Here, we talk about the writerly life that is unique to you, no matter your age, your season, or where you are in your creative journey. Even if you don't think you have one yet, or even if you think it's coming to an end. You are now an official Scribbly, so let's talk. Hopefully, you have a mug of something or a glass of something, and you're in a place where you can do some looking back. Not the cringeworthy kind where you wonder what the Sam Hill you were thinking or not thinking when you did that or didn't do it. There will be no shuddering here. This is an authentic looking back, the sort that lets you see just how much you've evolved. I suggest putting on those 2020 hindsight glasses, taking a sip, considering this. What times in your life have you realized that things aren't the same as they've been for a while? Not just the circumstances, but you. This may or may not have affected your writing, but let's focus there. Maybe you'd been carefree or careless, and you began to think more seriously. Those cozy mysteries and chick lit and light teen fiction were no longer satisfying to write. Perhaps you'd been idealistic and motivated to change the world and found yourself feeling angry but not wanting to be. The romances with the happy endings, the women's fiction with the near-perfect protagonists, the adventure stories with triumphant heroes didn't ring true for you anymore. Could be that the beliefs you were so sure of became more fluid, less rigid. The moralistic, agenda-driven stories and nonfiction just didn't feel real. There's even the possibility that your worldview had been sharp, clear, vivid, but you one day realized it was softer, more all-encompassing. So the plot skeleton, the hero's journey, any kind of story structure felt too constraining. If you've experienced any of those or something similar, you've found yourself between seasons, where how you've lived and thought and written for a while fits you like your little sister's sweater. Maybe that's happening now. It certainly is for me. And when it does, we can go astray very quickly. It can all go south. We think everything we've written up to this point has been trite, if not absolutely absurd. We don't know what to do next, so we think maybe we're finished. Or we try to get back the passion and motivation we used to have by doing the same things, but it seems to be out of reach. Basically, it feels weird and shadowy and not just a little bit scary. But in truth, it's simply a liminal space, intermediate, transitional, connective. We're no longer in one place, but we haven't reached the next one. I suggest we think of ourselves as trapeze artists. If you've ever seen them perform, you know that in order to sail from one swing to another, they have to let go of one before they can grab onto the next. For a brief, thrilling moment, they are flying through the air, holding on to nothing. That's where we are when we find ourselves between seasons, when our way of being in the world shifts and our writing has to change to reflect that. We don't move into one while still holding on to the other until we feel secure. I mean, imagine what it would be like for a trapeze artist to hold on to two swings at the same time. It's not a pretty picture. So today, in part 2 of our series on writing in between, let's take a deep look at what being between seasons means to our writerly lives. Now, a note before we proceed. While shifts we're talking about often coincide with age, like your coming of age or when you started adulting, midlife, the fourth quarter, they don't always. Crisis, a sudden shift in life circumstances, illness, those kinds of things can take us to one season and leave us hanging on until the next one, no matter where we are chronologically. Just keep that in mind. So first, how do we know we're between seasons? How do we know we don't just have the flu? Well, this varies with every writerly woman, but these are the signs I've observed most often, both in the scribblies I've worked with and in myself. The first sign is restlessness. Restlessness with the kind of thing you're writing, especially if you've been doing it for a while. I was known for several decades as a writer for the tween audience. Loved it until I didn't. I stopped before I could find myself just cranking out the same old stories. Another sign, feeling like you're done, yet knowing somewhere within that you're not. I left full-time writing in 2014 and became a professional mentor simply because I couldn't write another novel in the vein I'd been mining. I wasn't Christian enough for the CBA and too Christian for the ABA. I needed some time to realize what was next. Another sign is starting projects and abandoning them because they aren't grabbing you and taking you into that world where kids go unfed and you forget to brush your teeth. Feeling guilty because you've invested time and energy, maybe even some cash into where you are now in your life and in your writing, but you don't want to do it this way anymore. Those signs are not proof that you're undisciplined, lazy, irresponsible, or through. They're simply symptoms that it's time to let go of the old swing and discover what new phase awaits you. Yeah, well, how do we do that? How do we allow ourselves to drift in space until the next season takes shape without crashing and burning? I'm going to offer 3 inner focuses that have helped me when I've experienced the shift. 3 things that I'm dwelling in even as we speak. The first is attention. In this in-between time, it's essential to observe just what's going on. This requires a certain degree of detachment, of objectivity. Teresa of Lisieux described this as climbing up to a cloud and looking down on your life, apart from it, but keenly interested in it. And while we're up there on that fluffy cloud, we might ask ourselves, what's boring now? What feels like it belongs to somebody else's life? What makes me want to do anything besides write, like alphabetize the spices or work on my eyebrows or go out and spend money I don't need to spend on things I don't need? What is still trying to fit in at the party when it really just wants to go someplace else? This isn't the time to try to fix that, to suddenly write poetry when you never have, not because you want to, but because it might work. I've met writers who show up year after year at the same conference, each time with a different and desperate attempt at a new thing. I'm going to do a children's book this year. Maybe I'll try my hand at sci-fi. I'm pretty funny. I'm going to write some humorous essays. Nothing sticks because the writer hasn't observed herself. We are endlessly fascinating people, so why not take an interest in what's going on with us? The second focus is examination. Once we've observed where we are, we can blow off some of the dust to get a clearer picture of why we're there. For instance, has life changed so that what mattered yesterday simply doesn't have the same significance today? Things like having a baby, losing a job, being diagnosed with a chronic condition, falling in love. Or have your beliefs changed? Your childhood religion feels too small, too tight. You've opened up to spirituality when you never really gave it a second thought before. The nation you counted on has shown itself to be untrustworthy. Those things can rock your world and launch you into a new season. Or, conversely, have you discovered a talent or an ability or a trait in yourself you didn't even realize was there previously? You take a course or a workshop and find out you're a natural. You have to get a job and luck into something you never thought you'd take to. You're faced with a new living arrangement that brings out a best in you that was previously hidden. If you find out why you're restless, unmotivated, bored with the writerly life you've been living, the good stuff is naturally going to arise because you've made room for it. Once we come to terms with the fact that the changing of seasons is a time of growth in us, we can use our imagination. We can stop being freaked out by it and begin to imagine what it might be like to grab that next swing and fly to a new place. Rather than feel like failures because we can't do the same things the same way and get the same satisfying results, we can get a glimpse of what might possibly be next. Come on, we're writers. We live in our imaginations. Those magical places aren't just there for our characters. They're there for us. Now, this can't be forced. We're not talking about creating a new 5-year plan. we're still inches away from grasping the swing that's floating toward us. But we can ask ourselves some questions and simply wait for the answers. What shows up in my thoughts while I'm doing something that doesn't require deep attention? Changing a diaper, vacuuming the living room, collating documents for a meeting, raking leaves. Little impish elfin ideas that dance in between the automatic motions. What longings ache in my chest when I least expect them? This happens to me when I'm watching British detective shows on BritBox. I find myself wanting to engage in some of the things the characters do. Not the murders, obviously, but taking walks through meadows, gathering at the pub with friends, pondering by a fire with a glass of sherry in hand. That almost always finds its way into my writing ideas. What we long for in ourselves is what we long for our characters and for our readers. What keeps coming up in conversations, in the things I read, in the songs I hear? What makes you think, well, this must be making repeat appearances for a reason? This happened to me recently in seeing the last Downton Abbey movie, reading 2 novels by authors obviously at the end of their careers, and finding myself in the middle of 4 different yet almost identical dialogues with people I trust. I'm going to talk more about that in a later episode. When we allow this to simply land without immediately trying to do something with it, we're making the most of this liminal space. But therein lies the challenge, Scribblies. How many of us can sit around observing, examining, and imagining when we want to be writing? Well, first, let me remind us all that writing doesn't just mean sitting down at the keyboard or taking pen in hand and putting words down until we have a story. Here among the Scribbling Women, we promote the truth that writing encompasses everything we do as we create that story or nonfiction piece. We've talked about these things. Dreaming, gathering ideas, organizing them, playing with them, seeking information we need, getting some of it on us. Most of that happens before we ever write a single sentence. When you're embracing the liminal space, you are still writing. But because writers are doers, we need to, do something while we're observing, examining, and imagining. Otherwise, we just flail around and become frustrated. The trapeze artist isn't simply hanging in the air waiting for the swing to come to her, even though it may look that way. I have 3 suggestions for soft writing activities to sink into while the next season takes shape within us. Some of these might resonate with you, or they may give you ideas for your own. Number 1, revamp your writing space to reflect the differences in you and your writing. At one point in my writerly life, when I could feel it changing, I removed all the cutesy stuff from my office. The frogs, the hand-painted clipboards, the bright colors, and redid the space to reflect a more sophisticated view of the world. Now, as I enter a new season, it looks more like an old-fashioned library, conducive to thinking and learning rather than just producing. The changes don't have to be dramatic. If your writing space is remote, if you go to a cafe every week, redo your writing bag. If you just have a corner of the bedroom, try different lighting or a chair that fits your body better. If you have a whole room, take out what doesn't feel like you and reflect on what's left and what might be missing. The second activity is to declutter and reorganize all your old writing ideas. We all have those folders and notebooks and bins and piles of notes for projects we've always meant to do. Now's a good time to go through them and toss what no longer speaks to us and keep what we might actually be ready for now. Only don't just toss it all back into the basket or make a new pile. This is the perfect opportunity to get creative with binders, folders, computer files, even a private Pinterest board. And activity number 3, make lists. Not to-do lists, not numbered shoulds. Those will only overwhelm you and you're not ready for them. We're not making a plan here. We're simply allowing the next season's ideas to come to us. So start by making a list of lists you want to make. Things I love, life experiences I haven't written about already, things I don't want to think about anymore, stuff I see in movies and shows and books that makes me want a piece of that life, things people say that land with me for some reason. Let your lists be creative. Put them all in a journal you make or choose just for this, or put one list in each separate journal. That would be my MO. Create a vision board of the items. Do a collage of sticky notes. Just make it fun. Make it delicious. While you're doing all of this, and while you're thinking and imagining and pondering, remember where it's all ultimately coming from. The trapeze artist is not responsible for the swing being right where it needs to be in order for her to grasp it. Somebody else is standing on a platform sending it her way. There is never a time in a writer's life when an awareness of the spiritual is more essential than when we're between seasons. In fact, the shifting of seasons is itself a spiritual phenomenon. We can only truly lean into it if we recognize where it's coming from. Wherever we are in our experience of the divine, we would do well to go there and stay there for a while. Whether that means prayer, journaling, meditation, rituals, going on a retreat, we need to consciously open ourselves to what, in my view, God is making available. Now, as always, the bohos will try to elbow their way into this beautiful process, if not do a full-on body slam. We don't have to listen to them. To keep ourselves free, let's commit to avoiding these particular big old hairy obstacles. Believing that if we aren't producing in the concrete sense, we're falling behind. That is capitalistic thinking. Capitalism and art are not compatible. They have nothing to do with each other. Achieving and producing are not words that are part of the writerly lexicon. Applying them to our creative pursuits would be like viewing child raising as a purely scientific process. We can afford the time to gradually move from one season to the next. We can't afford not to. Our writing will suffer otherwise. Boho number 2, forcing yourself to move to the next thing. We aren't in control of this shift. We can't grab the next swing if it isn't there yet. The flight between them is where the magic happens. That's when the audience below gasps. Without that surrender, there is no real art. Boho number 3, retreating back into what used to be easy. It might still be easy. It might feel comfortable for a while until you become restless and bored and uneasy and start beating yourself up again. If the trapeze artist never lets go and simply swings back and forth on the same swing, you can only keep that up for so long. She might as well be on the playground, and even then, she'll get tired of it. Nobody said it would be easy. It isn't supposed to be. That's why it's called art. Maybe the scariest part of this in-betweenness is that we don't have control. We recognize that it's happening. We ponder it and understand it. We allow ourselves to see what might be next. And in the meantime, we keep moving forward even though we don't know exactly where we're going. But we didn't initiate it. We can't manipulate where it takes us. We can't even stop it without withering. We can only swing forward, let go, and trust that what we need will be there, because it will. If this is something you'd like to explore more, and don't we all, in January of 2026, something is going to become available to you. It's called The Scribbling Woman, an interactive companion for the writerly life in any season. This is kind of a journal, but you don't really write in it. This is a place that nudges you so that you can ponder. It prompts you so that you can think and dream and then create. If you really want to make sure that you get your hands on this, you can pre-order it December the 1st. In the meantime, anytime you want to, go to www.nancyrue.com for the books, for information about Instagram and Facebook, where we interact on all of these things. And in the meantime, Scribbly, no matter what season you're in, even if you're in between, somehow scribble on.